Hey, and welcome back to the Pod Junction podcast. So this episode is going to be a little different. If you've been listening for a while, you'll know that most episodes feature a business leader or entrepreneur sharing how podcasting is helping them grow their brand and their business. But this week, a couple of my guests had to reschedule. Life happens, right? And for a moment, I had to decide what now. Skipping a week wasn't an option for me. I really believe in showing up consistently because I know how much that matters when you're building something. So instead, I decided to fly solo. And actually, it gave me a chance to step back and reflect on some things that I think will resonate with you, especially if you're a business owner who's already podcasting or someone who's been thinking about it but isn't sure if it's worth it. I want to talk through 5 lessons that podcasting has taught me about business growth, especially when things don't go to plan. So the first lesson, when plans change, you still show up. Let's be honest, rescheduled guests, tech issues, running behind on editing, these are all normal parts of podcasting. And if you're a business owner, that probably sounds familiar to you too. Because let's face it, plans change all the time. A client pulls out. A team member calls in sick. The thing you thought would take an hour ends up taking 3 days. And the question you're constantly facing is, how do I respond? Podcasting mirrors that exact same reality. You plan ahead, you put systems in place, but sometimes things still wobble. And in those moments, it's not about being perfect. It's about staying consistent. For me, showing up this week, even without the planned guest, felt like a small but meaningful decision. Because that's what business is built on, small, consistent decisions that reinforce trust. Lesson number 2, the myth of the perfect podcast. One of the biggest blocks I see, especially from business owners thinking about starting a podcast, is the belief that it has to be perfect right out the gate, that you need to have everything figured out, that you need the perfect studio setup, or a full season ready to go, or a rock solid plan for how you'll get thousands of downloads. But here's the truth. Podcasting is a lot like business. You start with a clear reason why, and you figure out the how as you go. You learn by doing. You grow by adapting, and you connect through showing up, especially when things aren't perfect. There's no finish line where it suddenly becomes easy or flawless, but there is a point where you realize that the value you bring is in your perspective, your consistency, and your willingness to share what you're learning. Lesson number 3, when you podcast, you lead. Podcasting is one of the most authentic ways to connect with people, but it also puts you in a leadership role even if you don't see yourself that way. Because when you hit record, you're guiding a conversation. You're inviting people into a space where they can learn, reflect, or feel seen. And like any kind of leadership, it comes with challenges. There are days when the energy isn't there. There are moments when the self-doubt creeps in. There are unexpected gaps in your calendar where you're forced to ask, do I keep going? And my answer, yes, you keep going, because leadership isn't about having perfect circumstances. It's about being faithful with what you've got. Lesson number 4, your voice matters even when you're not sure what to say. This one became really clear to me, especially in moments like these where I've had to pivot. Your voice matters, not just your guests, not just your audiences, but yours. I used to hold back a lot in my episodes. I saw myself more as the person behind the scenes, the one facilitating the story, not telling it. But I've come to realize that sometimes the most impactful thing I can do is simply share what I'm learning. And that's true in podcasting. And it's definitely true in business. And something Matt Halloran said a couple episodes ago that has really stuck with me was that he talked about the importance of sprinkling your expertise, not turning the podcast into a pitch, but using your voice to build trust and rapport. You're not trying to prove you're the smartest person in the room. You're just showing up, honestly, sharing your perspective and letting your consistency speak for itself. This approach to me is so refreshing, and it's a reminder that you don't need to dominate the conversation to make an impact. You just need to be part of it with intention and generosity. So whether you're hosting your own podcast, thinking about starting one, or just learning to speak up more in your business, your voice can lead with value, even when you're still figuring things out. Finally, lesson number 5. Not all value shows up on a spreadsheet. This is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, especially as I've been trying to grow PodJunction as a service. Sometimes the value of podcasting, or honestly, any long-term investment, isn't obvious right away. And if you're working with a board or stakeholders, or even just managing your own expectations, it can be really hard to justify the time or the energy if there isn't immediate revenue. I felt that tension personally. I've had to explain why podcasting is worth continuing, even when the ROI doesn't show up in cash right away, because the reality is it can take 12 to 18 months, if not more, to see the full return on a podcast. Not just in leads or visibility, but actually in relationships, referrals, and reputation. But what I've learned is this: not all value shows up on a spreadsheet. Podcasting builds trust. It creates connection. It gives you a platform to lead, to share your message, to make space for others. And that kind of brand equity, you can't always measure it monthly, but it does compound over time. It's the same with strong branding, great customer experience, or internal culture building. These things matter deeply, even if they don't convert in a direct response funnel. That's why I kept going this week, because even if no one's counting downloads or tracking conversion rates on this one episode, I know that showing up consistently and honestly has long-term value. So those are just a few of the lessons podcasting has handed me, sometimes in the smooth moments, but honestly, mostly in the messy ones. And if you're still with me, you might be wondering whether it's worth it, whether podcasting is really something you want to commit to when there's already so much going on. That's exactly who I want to speak to next. If you've been thinking about starting a podcast, but keep putting it off because of the unknowns or the what ifs, this is me saying, I get it. It can feel overwhelming. It does take time. And sometimes, like this week, it throws you a curveball. But it's also one of the most rewarding, relationship building, authority strengthening tools I've ever used. Not just for me, but for the business leaders I work with too. Podcasting really does open doors. It deepens trust. It turns conversations into connections. And when you embrace the messy middle, as I had to do this week, it reminds you why you started in the first place. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. A bit of honesty, a few lessons, and a reminder that the moments where things don't go to plan are actually where some of the best growth happens. So thank you for tuning in, for being here, and for giving me the space to share a little more personally this time around. And if this episode resonated, if you've been thinking about podcasting and want to talk through whether it could work for your business, I'd love to chat. Just reach out to me on LinkedIn. And thanks for listening, and bye for now.